Do they get those behavioral problems since they are puppies, or they acquire those through the time that they're with the owner? How does it work?
Yeah, sure. So that's the whole nature versus nurture argument, and it's not always that clear. Sometimes we can put it down to something that's happened. There's been a trauma. So, my dog was okay around other dogs until it got attacked at the dog park, something like that. Yeah. But a lot of times there isn't anything that's that clear.
Welcome to the Possum Companion, where pets are part of our family. I'm your host, Joanna Herrera, the founder of Corcoran Bondi. I'm very excited to interview experts and pet owners to share their stories and insights so you can use them to take care of your babies. Hi, Scott.
Hi, how are you?
Can you please introduce yourself and tell me who you are?
Sure. My name's Scott Corcoran. I'm the owner of Adelaide K9 Services, and I'm a dog behaviour consultant.
Okay. So do you have pets?
Have two Belgian Malinois.
So how old are they?
They are 5 and 6 years old.
Yeah. Okay. So what are the things that they love the most?
Oh, look, they love biting things, but they love anything to do with chasing and catching things as well. They love the ball. They love frisbee. They were working dogs, so they enjoy any job you give them.
Okay. So what do you do normally when you leave home and you leave both at home, like those two dogs at home?
They come to work with me a lot.
Okay.
So they help me out with a lot of my work is with aggressive or reactive dogs, and so I use them as helper dogs to desensitize my clients' dogs to being around dogs they don't know.
Amazing. That's interesting. So how does it work? Like you bring in your dog, helping someone else's dog that is upset or overreacting?
Yeah. So when a dog's reactive to dogs that they don't know, it is generally a overwhelming reaction, not proportionate to the situation. A lot of it's caused by fear or anxiety and lack of socialization in the beginning. So we do counter conditioning and desensitization occurs at the same time. When we tell the dog what we want them to do when they're feeling like that.
That's great. So we were talking earlier that there is a big difference between a dog behavioral.
Yeah, there is. Yeah,
and a trainer, a dog
absolutely,
trainer.
Yeah.
So what is the difference?
So, a dog trainer will teach your dog to sit and lay down and come and do all those sort of things. A dog behaviour consultant is the person that you call when you have problem behaviours with your dog.
Oh, okay. So that's two different aspects.
They are, yeah. Yep.
So in this case, you only offer behavioral support?
Mostly, yeah. Yep.
Okay, so what are the things that people look for when they call you? Like, what are the frequent problems that they have?
Yeah, so most of my work is with aggressive or reactive dogs, and then there's managing trauma, anxiety, fear responses, all the way down to your very basic stuff like house training, jumping up. So really, it's the whole myriad, but most of my work is with those reactive dogs.
So it's a little bit of training around them as well.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, there's training is always part of the solution, but it's not the answer to the problem. If it was, I'd be out of a job.
So what sort of suggestions you give to someone who has an aggressive dog? What are the things that if you come to them? Obviously, you are training them, but what are the advice that you give to those people? Aggressive
dog or a reactive dog?
Both. Can you explain both?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, because
great.
there's a big difference, right?
Okay.
The reactive dog responds badly to stimulus in the environment, but isn't necessarily aggressive. So doesn't necessarily want to go and fight the other dog. But the aggressive dog is a dog that, given the opportunity, it will bite a person or another dog. That's the basic difference in those two definitions. They're very common phrases in the industry, but not often very well understood.
So what are the sort of suggestions that you give to the person, like how they should behave, or what are the things that they should do to handle those situations with those animals?
Mm-hmm. So we go through a very long process of finding out what's been happening for the dog and for the owner, and we work out the ABCs of the behaviour, which is the antecedent, which is what happens immediately before the behaviour, the behaviour itself, which is aggression or reactivity, and then the consequences, which is what's happening immediately after that. And in most cases, it's something in that consequence that's reinforcing the behaviour. So we try to work all of that out and get to an underlying cause, which in most cases is fear or anxiety, and then we get to work on working out those problems.
So you have those like solutions that you offer, but you also work with the owner, the pet owner, to obviously give the pet owner some task to do, right?
Oh, it's very much, yeah. Most of the work is done by the owner. It has to be like that, because it's one of the reasons that board and train, where you send your dog off to be trained, doesn't normally work for that type of behaviour, because when they come back into the environment of your home, they very quickly go back to the behaviour the way it was.
So I have been watching like programs about this type of dogs that are reacting when they are walking with the pet, with their owners, and some of the things that I heard is that is because the actual owner is nervous when someone passes close. So I'm not sure if that's true. Like if the dog behaves in that way, is because obviously the owner is nervous as well.
Sure, yeah. So you've got to be mindful about what you're putting into the situation yourself as the owner. When you've got the dog there on the lead, a lot of your thoughts and feelings travel down the lead to the dog, as we say, and that how that looks a lot of times is choking up on the lead. I'm making it really tight. I'm getting really short on it because I've had a bad experience before, and of course all that tension in the lead and me getting really close to the dog is signals to the dog that there's a problem. So you have to first of all manage your own your response to the strange dog being there, because once your dog is reactive, it's very natural for you actually, a lot of people stop breathing when they go, oh, they have that little fight or flight response, right? And so the dog picks that up right away and goes, oh, what's going on? Why did mum or dad stop breathing just now? And they look around, and if all they can see in the environment that's different is a dog they don't know, well, they will attribute that to that dog. So remaining calm yourself is a big part of it, as well as the engagement with your own dog, your relationship with your own dog, and then some handling tips for when it actually happens.
Yeah, that's something that I heard, and I feel that is very interesting, because we don't realize that our behavior also affects our pets' behavior.
Oh, absolutely, it does. Yeah, I've had many times clients with a dog that will be super reactive on the lead, and they can hand the lead over to me, and I'll walk the same dog past the dog without any problem at all. So because the owners got scared, and they're worried about how the dog is going to react, which is, again, it's completely normal to be like that, and that's most of my clients are. But yeah, it definitely impacts on how the dog is going to deal with the situation.
So in this case, you need to as well give training to them how they have to behave around the animals.
Correct. Yeah, it's very much so. From day one, our training is about building engagement, having a healthy relationship, and building trust and bond with the dog, that they will trust you to deal with the situation of the of coming across a dog they don't know, rather than thinking they have to take the lead. And because inevitably when that happens, they make terrible decisions, and that often manifests as behaviour that we would classify as aggressive.
Yeah. What other sort of things you support with, like aggressive dogs? What else? Like, for example, when people go out with their dogs and they pull and they get so stressed around being in public places, those sort of things?
Yeah,
well?
I do a bit of that. Loose leash walking is actually a big part of the reactivity program that I run, because you have to get the walking right. The dog has to be able to walk comfortably and to accept your leadership when you're out walking. It's a big part of it. I have consulted on walking, but it's a fairly minor issue for me. It's about a 20-minute fix.
Oh, really? So what are the things like?
It's one of the easiest things when you
So I
you
need
know how to do
that
it.
help, please.
Okay,
Because my doggy, he's a puppy, but he's like, he walks for all the directions. So I don't know, like what, for example, in my case, what suggestion you will give me if I said to you, I walk out with my dog and he just walks, he moves from one side to another. So I don't know how to guide him.
So the first thing about having a good walk with the dog is generally relates to door manners, right? So if you put the dog's lead on inside the house, and the first thing you do is you go to the front door and you open the door and you walk out. If your dog blows through the door like the Kool-Aid man, then
mine does.
Right. Yeah. Well, then your walk is going to go very poorly, because that's the beginning of the walk.
Okay.
And you've set the tone really badly. So we want the dog to sit while you open the door and to remain sitting until they're invited to come through the door. So that's the first step.
So do I need to put the leash before I go out the house?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And it doesn't take a long time to train the dog to do that. A few repetitions will do the trick, and they'll understand. It's not a alpha dog thing. We don't need to walk through the door first, but we just want the dog to wait for permission to go through. They can walk through before us. That's fine, as long as they're waiting for permission.
Okay, wonderful. And there is a particular side that I have to keep the dog on?
So that's the start, and then you work on a few other techniques. So probably our next go-to one is some leash pressure training, and that's helping the dog understand what it means when there's pressure coming onto the lead. And essentially what it means is that you want the dog to come over closer to you, right? Because they've gone a little bit off the path, and the lead has got tight. So to avoid that pressure, they need to come back closer to us. So we'll give the dog the whole lead, let them move away from us. We'll typically use a clicker for this training, and we'll mark. We'll put a little bit of pressure on. It's just consistent pressure. It's not a pop or a tug. Just consistent pressure. As soon as the dog yields to the pressure, we'll mark with the clicker, and we'll shuffle back a bit, make ourselves a little bit more exciting. And when the dog comes, we'll reward them with a treat or a pat, depending on the dog.
Okay. And is there any suggestions in terms of how long should be that walk, or it could be as long as
yeah, it depends on the dog.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Different dogs have different needs. Working dogs, you'd be lucky to be able to walk them enough, but a bulldog will be having a heart attack halfway around the block. So it's got to be a dog by dog basis, that one.
Yeah, but the training, do you have to have like a minimum number of blocks to start doing that training, or how does it work?
For just the walking?
Yeah.
The walking is basically one session.
Okay.
Yeah, it's very quick. The concepts are very easy to understand, and it's very easy for the people to follow them, and then they can always reach out and ask me if they've got any questions after that.
That's great to know. I will probably need
no
you
problem.
for that.
Yeah.
So is there any other things that you support with in terms of behavior?
Probably the only other thing that takes up a lot of our time is just nervous dogs. So fearful and anxious around people they don't know. That's another very common one for me at the moment.
And what are the things that you suggest around those things? Because I know we have listeners here who has pets and they would love to have even a short advice or how to,
Yeah, sure. So when you've got a dog that has a fearful or an anxious response to anything in the environment, the way through it is through controlled exposure. So not to be confused with flooding. We don't want to expose the dog to that stimulus at full intensity, because that's problematic. We know, that used to be the way, but we know better than that nowadays. So we'll control, give them controlled exposure to, if it's people, then we'll have controlled exposure to a person. So I normally do that role when I meet a fearful dog, and it might involve me sitting on the floor and tossing biscuits to the dog for the first couple of sessions, and getting a bond with that dog. Once you can convince the dog that a stranger isn't that scary, and it's not something that they need to be worried about, then that opens the door for
more people to be.
Correct. Yeah. So the first one is always the hardest, but once you've convinced the dog, it's generally pretty easy after that.
Is there any particular breed that have that kind of problems?
No, all of the problems are pretty well spread. I've had aggressive golden retrievers and fearful bully breeds. So it's not really, it's never just one, never one breed.
And do they get those behavioral problems since they are puppies, or they acquire those through the time that they're with the owners? How does it work? Yeah,
sure. So that's the whole nature versus nurture argument, and it's not always that clear. Sometimes we can put it down to something that's happened. There's been a trauma. So, my dog was okay around other dogs until it got attacked at the dog park, something like that. Yeah. But a lot of times there isn't anything that's that clear. And so what we have to do then is just, have a really good look. We spend a lot of time talking through everything that's happened for the dog with the client to the best of their knowledge. And then we try to work it out after that. So it's either genetic or something in the environment, or a combination of those things. And to know, to really be able to narrow down whether it's genetic or not, we probably need to know a little bit about the dog's siblings and their parents.
Okay.
And with a rescue dog, of course, you don't know that. Even with some well-bred dogs, you find it difficult to get that information.
So if you don't have that information, you will have to just talk about the environment of the dog or things.
So it's a lot of guesswork at that point, and really not necessarily that helpful, because you just treat the behaviour.
Yeah.
So in terms of my job is just treating the behaviour, and if that behaviour is, hey, my dog is fearful around people it doesn't know, then we work on that. It's useful to know where it came from, and whether it was genetic or something in the environment. Certainly, if it's something in the environment, it's useful for me to know, because I can either avoid that or I can use that as part of the recovery for the dog.
That's great to know. So there is one of our listeners just ask something about dogs that bark all the time at home.
Mm-hmm.
So is that a behavioral thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So why they do that, and how we can stop them doing that?
Well, again, it depends on the dog. Some dogs are genetically predisposed to alert barking. So, your guardian breeds are going to do a lot of that naturally. And then of course, some of that barking is probably due to lack of exercise and mental stimulation.
Okay.
So we need to make sure the dog's needs are being met in that regard, and also look exactly what's triggering the barking.
So what are the guardian dogs? Because I don't know.
A German Shepherd, a Rottweiler, those sort of dogs, they were bred to guard property. Well, the German Shepherd is also a shepherd dog, but a lot of them these days have been used for that guard type role, and so they're predisposed to what we call alert barking, which is not necessarily bad behavior from a dog. They're barking to let you know that someone's there. But if they're in the backyard all day by themselves and they hear people walking past or the next door neighbour and they're barking because of that, then it's that's when it becomes problematic.
Yeah. So what are the things that you suggest for people to work on mental stimulation for their pets? I know that is walks, but what else can you suggest people to do?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It depends, again, it depends on the dog. If you've got a working dog, if you've got a border collie or a kelpie, then they're going to really love to play fetch and have a run around. Other dogs might not have the same physical needs, but might really like to use their nose. So, scent hounds, they really love to sniff. So giving them an opportunity to sniff things, playing some games with them where they can find things using their nose, that's going to be really good for them.
In this case, will be snuffle mats.
Yeah, a snuffle mat.
Toys.
Correct.
Lick mats.
Yeah. Not so much those that you can actually play. You can do nose work, which is actually a sport now of teaching the dog's scent detection, and any dogs can do it because all dogs have fantastic scent, but it's what we call genetic fulfillment for a hound. For like your basset hound loves to sniff things, been bred for it.
Yeah, and I feel that they get more tired when they sniff things.
Absolutely, yeah. The dog's nose is has hundreds of thousands of nerve endings in it, and it's a big job to run the nose. So running the nose, even for a short amount of time, is very taxing on the dog.
Yeah, so I got a Jack Russell, and he's very
Lovely.
crazy. So I feel that when I walk him and I allow him to smell, he gets more tired than even going for long walks.
Mm-hmm.
Probably that's something that...
Absolutely, yeah. Yep, so allowing the dog to sniff on the walk is good, providing that the dog understands that he's supposed to walk nicely for the rest of the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's good to allow him to smell, but
absolutely,
at the same time...
No, it's fantastic, but as long as you've got control.
Okay.
Yeah, if he's pulling you over to pillar and post to go and sniff everything, then that's probably not healthy. But it's certainly good to allow him to go and have a sniff, and to put it on command, so he understands the difference between walking nicely and going and having a sniff in the bush.
And how can I put him on command?
Yeah, so you have a command for starting the walk. It doesn't have to be as formal as heel, but you can say okay or let's go, and then you have a command for the dog to be free. So then they can, go around and be a dog, even if they're not off lead. They might be on a long lead, but they can go and do dog things. And then when you want them to let them go and have a sniff, you can put that on command by saying something like go sniff, and that releases him to go and do that, so he understands. And strangely enough, that when you do put it on command and they're allowed to do it, they seem to want to do it less. So it's
interesting.
It's like being naughty children, I think. Yeah.
So is there any story that you can say about like you training a dog and being like super naughty and you have to like overtrain the dog like because of that?
I don't know that many of our clients would say their dog was super naughty, super aggressive, or super reactive. Yeah, sure, but we don't tend to get those real nice but naughty. No, I think a lot of people resolve those problems themselves and don't need to get professional help.
So is there any suggestion you can give to people when they have a puppy,
mm-hmm.
for them to start like building up that, trust and
mm-hmm.
behavior since they are very like babies?
Yeah, they are. So, and building a bond with a dog is very important. It's the first thing that needs to happen when you bring either a puppy or an adult dog home, and you achieve that by establishing a routine and sticking to it, making sure that all the dog's needs are met. So they always have access to fresh water, they always get their food, they're always eating the right thing. It's round about the same time, doesn't have to be precisely, but it's, in the mornings and in the evenings, they always get the meal, and then spending time with them, allocating time to take them on a walk, groom them, train with them, and also have some fun. Let them be a dog. So going back to that last question, finding out what works for that particular dog and then letting them express it. So if you've got that border collie, then he wants to run around and jump and catch things and play frisbee or whatever. If you've got a greyhound, he probably wants to lay around the couch most of the time, but when he does go out, he wants to hit top speed.
Okay.
Right, so find somewhere where you can let him do that. Yeah, and other dogs, they like to play tug, right? So have a good, vigorous game of tug with a dog is also a very useful thing to do.
Yeah, and there are so many areas in Adelaide where you can take your dogs as well. And there are like dog parks as well for large dogs and small dogs where they love to be in, which are good ways for them to get to know other dogs and get, or it's not good?
Not good.
Oh, really?
No.
Okay. Tell me more about it, because I would love to know.
Dog parks are like UFC for dogs, They're a good idea on paper, but they assume that everybody that takes their dog there is responsible, pays enough attention, and has enough control over their dog. And most people at the dog park don't meet any of that criteria. And, unfortunately, the dog learns, even if it doesn't have a bad experience, like get into a terrible fight, they're still learning some pretty undesirable behaviour by being around strange dogs all the time.
Okay.
They learn to ignore you and to devalue you by the time they spend there.
Okay, so you better suggest to just go out on your own with your dog in an open space or something like that.
Yeah, so the dog needs to socialise, that's really important, but you've just got to be a little bit careful about how you do it. So I'm not saying don't use dog parks ever, but what I say to my clients is if there's a dog park around the corner from you and you like the idea of going there with the dog, suss it out a bit. Visit it every day of the week and work out who's there and when they're there and what sort of dogs are there and how much control they have, and are the dogs friendly and other people paying attention. And if the answer to all those things is yes, then that might be a suitable time to take your dog there and to make friends with those people and have that group. And if someone arrives that you don't know, then it's probably time to pack up. That's how I would use a dog park.
Thank you so much,
no worries,
Scott, for being here.
Yep.
Is there any place where you consider people can find the information about you, about what you do, how people can find you?
Yeah, sure. So you can look us up on our website, which is www.adelaideK9.com.au, or you can give me a call.
What is your number?
0413 067 769.
Anyway, I'm going to put it in the notes of the podcast so people can have it.
Yeah, okay, yeah, great.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of The Possum Companion. If you have any further questions for our experts, feel free to leave them in the show notes or reach out to me directly. And if you are a pet expert who would love to contribute to this podcast, we will be thrilled to hear from you. Don't forget to follow us, and if you enjoyed today's episode, we will really appreciate a 5-star review. Thanks again, and we will see you at the next episode.